In the annals of history, few names resonate with as much intrigue, power, and enduring mystery as the Knights Templar. For centuries, their story has captivated imaginations, fueled countless legends, and inspired both awe and suspicion. They were an order of warrior monks, a unique fusion of spiritual devotion and military might, whose meteoric rise to unparalleled influence and dramatic, controversial fall continues to echo through time. From the sun-baked battlefields of the Holy Land to the opulent courts of medieval Europe, the Templars carved a path unlike any other. They were protectors of pilgrims, fierce crusaders, and pioneers of an early form of international banking. Yet, their immense power and wealth ultimately became their undoing, leading to a brutal suppression that left a legacy of unanswered questions and tantalizing secrets. In this comprehensive documentary, we will embark on an epic journey to unravel the true story of the Knights Templar. We will delve into their humble origins in the aftermath of the First Crusade, exploring the desperate need for their existence. We will witness their transformation into one of the most formidable military and financial forces of the medieval world, examining their pivotal role in the Crusades and the innovative systems they developed. We will then confront the political machinations, accusations, and betrayals that led to their shocking downfall, culminating in the fiery death of their last Grand Master. Finally, we will explore their enduring legacy, the myths and legends that have grown around them, and their surprising influence on modern culture and secret societies. Prepare to journey back to a time of faith and fanaticism, of honor and treachery, as we uncover the historical features and characteristics of the Knights Templar, an order whose story is as compelling as it is complex, and whose mystique continues to enthrall us to this very day. To truly understand the genesis of the Knights Templar, we must first cast our minds back to the tumultuous landscape of the Levant in the early 12th century. The First Crusade, launched in 1095 by Pope Urban II, had achieved its primary, albeit brutal, objective, the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. This monumental victory established the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, a fragile Christian outpost in a predominantly Muslim world. While the city of Jerusalem itself was now under Christian control, the surrounding territories, collectively known as Outremer, remained a volatile and dangerous frontier. The initial euphoria of the Crusader victory soon gave way to the harsh realities of maintaining a European-style kingdom thousands of miles from home. The newly established Latin states, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Edessa, and the County of Tripoli, were constantly under threat from surrounding Muslim powers. Their borders were fluid, their populations a mix of Franks, native Christians, and Muslims, and their very existence depended on a continuous influx of manpower and resources from Europe. For devout Christians in Europe, the capture of Jerusalem opened up an unprecedented opportunity for pilgrimage. The journey to the Holy City, a spiritual quest of immense significance, became a fervent desire for many. However, this pilgrimage was far from a peaceful spiritual retreat. The routes from the coastal ports, such as Jaffa, inland to Jerusalem were treacherous. These roads wound through desolate landscapes, often poorly guarded, and were rife with dangers. Bandits, opportunistic raiders, and skirmishing parties from local Muslim factions frequently preyed upon the unsuspecting pilgrims. Accounts from the era described pilgrims being routinely robbed, abducted, or even massacred, sometimes by the hundreds, before they could reach their sacred destination. The existing military forces of the Latin Kingdom were stretched thin, constantly engaged in defending borders, garrisoning castles, and participating in larger military campaigns. They simply did not possess the resources or the manpower to effectively police the vast network of pilgrimage routes. While there were other nascent military orders, such as the Knights Hospitaller, their primary focus at this early stage was on providing medical care and hospitality to pilgrims and crusaders. There was a clear and urgent void, a dedicated, professional military force whose sole purpose was the protection of these vulnerable travelers. It was into this crucible of faith, conflict, and desperate need that the Knights Templar would emerge, offering a radical and unprecedented solution to a pressing problem. Amidst this backdrop of peril and spiritual fervor, a small group of devout knights took a revolutionary step. Around 1119, a French nobleman named Hugh de Payens, along with 8 other knights, approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem and Patriarch Warmond. Their proposal was audacious: to form a monastic military order dedicated to protecting Christian pilgrims on their journey to the Holy City. These initial 9 knights were men of deep faith and martial skill, but they were also impoverished, relying on alms for their sustenance. They took traditional monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but unlike conventional monks, their primary service to God would be through the sword. King Baldwin II, recognizing the urgent need for such a force, granted them quarters in a wing of the royal palace on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This location was profoundly symbolic. It was believed to be built upon the ruins of Solomon's Temple, a site of immense religious significance for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. It was from this sacred, ancient ground that they derived their name, the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or more commonly, the Knights Templar. For nearly a decade, the Templars operated as a small, dedicated, but largely unrecognized force. Their numbers were few, and their resources limited. However, their unwavering commitment to their mission, their bravery in the face of danger, and their unique blend of monastic piety and military prowess began to attract attention. Their cause found a powerful advocate in Bernard of Clairvaux, the charismatic and highly influential Cistercian abbot. Bernard, a towering figure of the 12th century, was deeply impressed by the Templars' dedication and saw in them the embodiment of a new form of Christian knighthood, one that channeled martial energy not for worldly gain, but for divine purpose. Bernard's advocacy proved to be the turning point. In 1129, the Council of Troyes was convened, a pivotal ecclesiastical gathering that would formally recognize and endorse the new order. Bernard himself attended and played a crucial role in drafting the Templars' rule, a comprehensive code of conduct that would govern every aspect of their lives. This Latin rule, inspired by Cistercian monasticism, transformed the Templars from a loose band of knights into a highly disciplined, officially sanctioned military order. It detailed their spiritual duties, their military organization, their diet, clothing, and even their personal conduct. They were forbidden from hunting, gambling, and frivolous entertainment. Silence was often enforced, and communal living was paramount. Their distinctive white mantle, symbolizing purity, was later adorned with a red cross, a potent symbol of martyrdom and their commitment to Christ. Bernard of Clairvaux further championed their cause through his influential treatise, De Laudi Novi Militiae, or In Praise of the New Knighthood. In this work, he eloquently reconciled the seemingly contradictory roles of monk and warrior, arguing that the Templars were not merely shedding blood, but engaging in the male side, the killing of evil, not men, for the greater glory of God. This theological justification provided the moral and spiritual foundation for the Templars' existence, legitimizing their unique status within Christendom. With papal endorsement and a clear, strict rule, the Knights Templar were now poised for an extraordinary expansion, ready to become one of the most powerful forces in the medieval world. With papal blessing and a clearly defined mission, the Knights Templar rapidly transformed from a small band of protectors into a formidable military machine, arguably the most effective fighting force of the Crusades. Their success was not merely due to individual bravery, but to a highly organized structure, rigorous training, and an unwavering discipline that set them apart from their secular counterparts. At the heart of the order's military might was its hierarchical structure. At the top was the Grand Master, the supreme commander, elected for life. Beneath him were various officers, including the seneschal, second in command, the marshal, responsible for military affairs, horses, and arms, and the commander of the land and commander of the city, overseeing Templar holdings. The fighting force itself was primarily composed of 3 main ranks: Knight Brothers. These were the elite, noble-born warriors, easily recognizable by their distinctive white mantles adorned with a red cross. Each knight was typically accompanied by a squire, often a non-member or a sergeant brother in training, and several horses, usually 2 war horses, destriers, a riding horse, palfrey, and a pack horse, ronson. Their equipment was standardized and practical, eschewing the elaborate ornamentation common among secular knights. They wore chainmail hauberks, coifs, and chausse, often supplemented with padded jerkins for additional protection. Their primary weapons included lances, swords, and maces. Sergeant brothers, comprising the majority of the fighting force, these were non-noble members who served as infantry, archers, or light cavalry. They wore black or brown mantles with a red cross and provided crucial support to the Knight brothers, often outnumbering them significantly. Their roles were diverse, from guarding castles and escorting convoys to fighting alongside the knights in pitched battles. Chaplains, though not combatants, these ordained priests were vital to the order's spiritual well-being. They ministered to the brothers, heard confessions, and celebrated Mass, ensuring the spiritual readiness of the warrior monks. The Templars' training was relentless, blending martial prowess with monastic asceticism. They were taught to fight as a cohesive unit, prioritizing the order's objectives over individual glory. Silence was often maintained even in battle formations, allowing for clear commands and disciplined execution. This emphasis on collective action and unwavering obedience made them exceptionally effective on the battlefield. Their battle tactics were renowned, particularly their devastating cavalry charge, known as the conroys. This involved squadrons of knights, often 25 to 50 strong, charging in a tight, disciplined formation, knee to knee, with lances lowered. This coordinated assault was designed to break enemy lines and instill terror. Contemporary accounts describe the sheer psychological impact of witnessing these white-mantled warriors, seemingly fearless of death, thundering towards their foes. They were often deployed as the vanguard in attacks or as the rearguard in retreats, always holding the most dangerous positions. Key battles highlight their military effectiveness. At the Battle of Haram in 1164, despite being outnumbered, the Templars fought with such ferocity that they inflicted heavy casualties before being overwhelmed. Their most famous stand was perhaps at the Battle of Montgassard in 1177, where a small Crusader force, including a significant Templar contingent, decisively defeated Saladin's much larger army. The Templars' disciplined charge was instrumental in shattering the Ayyubid forces, turning the tide of battle. Their commitment to fighting to the last man was legendary. The Templar rule explicitly stated that they were never to retreat unless ordered by their commander, and even then, only if the odds were overwhelmingly against them. This meant they often fought to the death, earning them a fearsome reputation among their enemies and inspiring awe among their allies. Their standard, the Busant, a black and white banner, symbolized their dual nature, black for the sins of the world, white for the purity they sought. It was said that the Templars would never abandon the Busant in battle, and as long as it flew, they would continue to fight. This unwavering resolve, combined with their tactical prowess and spiritual conviction, made the Templar military machine a force to be reckoned with, a bulwark of the Crusader states for nearly 2 centuries. While their military exploits are often the most celebrated aspect of the Knights Templar, their ingenuity in the realm of finance was equally, if not more, revolutionary. The Templars were not merely warrior monks, they were also pioneers of an early form of international banking, developing sophisticated financial systems that were centuries ahead of their time. This financial acumen allowed them to accumulate immense wealth and wield significant economic and political influence across medieval Europe. The genesis of their financial services lay in the practical needs of pilgrims and crusaders. Traveling to the Holy Land was not only dangerous but also logistically challenging, especially when carrying large sums of money or valuables. The Templars offered a solution: a secure deposit and transfer system. A pilgrim could deposit their money or assets at a Templar preceptory, commandery, in their home country, receiving in return a coded letter of credit or a bill of exchange. Upon arrival in the Holy Land, they could present this document at another Templar house and withdraw their funds, minus a small fee. This system effectively eliminated the risk of theft during the perilous journey, making travel safer and more accessible for many. This innovative system quickly expanded beyond pilgrims to include monarchs, nobles, and merchants. Kings, such as Henry III of England, used Templar services to finance land purchases or transfer funds for various projects. The Templars became trusted custodians of royal treasuries, holding vast sums of money, jewels, and important documents in their heavily fortified preceptories. Their reputation for integrity, discipline, and security made them the preferred bankers for many of Europe's most powerful figures. Their financial activities were diverse and extensive. They provided loans to monarchs and nobles, often against the security of land or future revenues. They managed vast estates and properties across Europe, which generated significant income through agriculture, rents, and trade. Their network of nearly 1,000 commanderies, stretching from England to the Holy Land, served not only as military recruitment and training centers but also as administrative hubs for their financial operations. These preceptories functioned as self-sufficient economic units, complete with farms, workshops, and chapels, contributing to the order's overall wealth. The Templars also engaged in currency exchange, acted as tax collectors for various rulers, and even managed customs duties in some ports. Their meticulous record-keeping, often conducted by their non-combatant members, ensured transparency and efficiency in their transactions. This vast financial empire gave the Templars an unprecedented level of independence. They were often exempt from local taxes and laws, answering directly to the Pope. This autonomy, combined with their immense wealth, allowed them to operate as a powerful, transnational entity, often rivaling the economic power of some kingdoms. Their financial innovations laid some of the groundwork for modern banking practices, demonstrating a remarkable blend of religious devotion, military prowess, and astute business acumen. However, this very wealth and independence would eventually become a source of envy and suspicion, sowing the seeds for their tragic downfall. Beyond the battlefield and the counting house, the daily life of a Knight Templar was one of profound asceticism, strict discipline, and unwavering devotion. Their existence was a carefully structured blend of monastic piety and military readiness, governed by the Latin rule, which dictated every aspect of their conduct from dawn till dusk. The day began long before sunrise, typically around 2 a.m., with the first of the 8 canonical hours, matins, a night vigil of prayers and chants. The brothers would rise from their simple beds, often sleeping in their clothes in communal dormitories, ready for immediate action if an alarm was raised. The emphasis was on humility and uniformity. There were no personal possessions, and even their clothing was standardized. After matins, lauds followed at first light, marking the beginning of the active day. Silence was a sacred and strictly enforced aspect of Templar life. During meals, in the chapel, and often during work, brothers were expected to communicate through gestures or signs rather than speech. This was not merely a disciplinary measure but a spiritual practice, designed to foster introspection, prevent idle chatter, and maintain a constant focus on God. Meals themselves were frugal, typically consisting of bread, vegetables, and water or watered wine. Meat was a rare luxury, usually reserved for the sick or elderly, and consumed only a few times a week. They ate in refectory halls, seated side by side, while one brother read aloud from scripture or the rule, reinforcing their spiritual commitment. Between prayers and meals, the Templars engaged in a variety of duties essential to the order's functioning. For the Knight brothers and Sergeant brothers, this meant rigorous military training. They practiced swordsmanship, horsemanship, and tactical maneuvers, ensuring they remained in peak physical condition and battle-ready. They also maintained their weapons, armor, and horses, which were vital assets. Non-combatant members and servants would tend to the agricultural lands, manage the financial records, or perform various administrative tasks within the preceptories. The vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience were not mere formalities but the bedrock of their existence. Personal wealth was forbidden, all possessions belonged to the order. Celibacy was strictly observed, a stark contrast to the often licentious lives of secular knights. And absolute obedience to their superiors, from the Grand Master down to the local commander, was paramount. Infractions of the rule, no matter how minor, were met with swift and often public punishment, ranging from fasting and public confession to flogging. This severe discipline was believed to purify the soul and strengthen the order as a whole. Even their appearance was regulated. The white mantle with the red cross was not just a uniform but a symbol of their identity and commitment. Personal grooming was minimal, beards were often worn, but vanity was discouraged. They were forbidden from receiving personal letters or gifts without permission, and even pets were generally not allowed. This austere lifestyle, though seemingly harsh by modern standards, provided the Templars with a profound sense of purpose and brotherhood. Each rule, each ritual, was designed to strip away worldly distractions and focus their minds and bodies on their divine mission, forging them into the dedicated warrior monks that became both their strength and their legend. The immense power and influence of the Knights Templar, so meticulously built over more than a century, was inextricably linked to the fate of the Crusader states in the Holy Land. As the 13th century wore on, the tide of fortune began to turn decisively against the Christian presence in the Levant. The initial fervor of the Crusades had waned, and European support for these distant kingdoms became increasingly sporadic and insufficient. This gradual erosion of Christian control would directly undermine the very raison d'etre of the Templars and set the stage for their eventual downfall. Throughout the 13th century, the Crusader states faced relentless pressure from resurgent Muslim powers, particularly the Mamluks of Egypt. One by one, key Christian strongholds fell. Antioch, a Magyar principality, was lost in 1268. Tripoli, another significant county, followed in 1289. Each loss represented a strategic blow, shrinking the territorial base of the Latin East and isolating the remaining Christian enclaves. The Templars, along with the Hospitallers and other military orders, fought valiantly in these desperate struggles, often bearing the brunt of the fighting. Their castles, formidable fortresses like Croc de Chevaliers, though primarily Hospitaller, and Chastel Pellerin, Templar, became symbols of resistance, but even these bastions could not stem the inevitable tide. The climax of this prolonged decline came with the siege of Acre in 1291. Acre, the last Magyar Crusader stronghold and the capital of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem after the fall of Jerusalem itself in 1187, was a bustling port city, a hub of trade and a symbol of Christian presence. Its fall would mark the definitive end of the Crusader era in the Holy Land. The Mamluk Sultan al-Ashraf Khalil launched a massive assault, deploying an overwhelming force and advanced siege weaponry. The defense was fierce, with the Templars once again distinguishing themselves with their legendary bravery. Under the command of Grand Master Guillaume de Beaujeu, they fought with their customary ferocity, holding the most dangerous sectors of the city walls. However, the odds were insurmountable. After a brutal siege lasting over a month, the city walls were breached. The remaining defenders, including many Templars, retreated to their fortified compound within Acre, making a final, desperate stand. Grand Master de Beaujeu was mortally wounded. The Mamluks eventually overwhelmed the last pockets of resistance, and Acre fell. The few surviving Templars, including the new Grand Master Thibaut Gaudin, managed to escape by sea, retreating first to Sidon and then to their headquarters on the island of Cyprus. Riley, but psychologically. With the Holy Land now entirely lost to Christian control, the primary mission of the Knights Templar, the protection of pilgrims and the defense of Christian territories in the Levant, was effectively rendered obsolete. This created an existential crisis for the order. What was their purpose now? Debates raged within the order and across Europe about the future role of military orders. Should they launch a new crusade? Should they merge with the Hospitallers? Or had their time simply passed? This profound loss of purpose, coupled with their immense wealth and independent status, made them vulnerable to external pressures and provided fertile ground for those who sought to undermine their power. The stage was now set for a different kind of battle, one fought not on the sands of the Holy Land, but in the treacherous courts of Europe. The fall of Acre in 1291 was more than just a military defeat, it was a profound psychological and political turning point for the Knights Templar. With their primary mission in the Holy Land effectively ended, the order, now based in Cyprus, found itself in a precarious position. Their immense wealth, vast landholdings across Europe, and independent status, which had once been sources of strength and admiration, now became liabilities, breeding envy and suspicion among the secular rulers of Europe. At the forefront of this growing animosity was King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. Philip was a monarch driven by an insatiable desire to consolidate royal power and fill his depleted treasury. He had already demonstrated his ruthlessness by expelling Jews from France and seizing their assets, and by challenging the authority of the papacy. The Templars, with their vast financial resources and independent jurisdiction, represented a formidable obstacle to his ambitions, and indeed, a tempting target for his financial woes. Philip was heavily indebted to the order, having borrowed significant sums to finance his wars, and the prospect of simply erasing these debts by destroying his creditors must have been a powerful motivator. The Templars' unique position as a transnational organization, answerable only to the Pope, also made them a threat to the emerging concept of national sovereignty. They operated outside the direct control of any single monarch, maintained their own armies, and possessed a network of fortresses and properties that crisscrossed Europe. This level of autonomy, combined with their perceived secrecy and the sheer scale of their wealth, fueled rumors and mistrust. Many saw them as a state within a state, a powerful entity that could potentially challenge royal authority. Philip IV, a master of political manipulation and propaganda, began a systematic campaign to discredit the Templars. He sought to turn public opinion against them, laying the groundwork for their eventual destruction. The accusations leveled against the order were grave and sensational, designed to shock and outrage the deeply religious populace of medieval Europe. These charges included heresy, idolatry, specifically the worship of a mysterious idol known as Baphomet, blasphemy, denying Christ, spitting on the cross, sodomy, and various other moral transgressions. Many of these accusations were likely fabricated or exaggerated, often stemming from the testimony of disgruntled former members or individuals coerced under torture. A key figure in this propaganda war was Esquin de Fleuren, a former Templar who had been expelled from the order and subsequently became an informant for Philip. His sensational, albeit unreliable, testimony provided Philip with the pretext he needed to act. The king meticulously gathered these accusations, building a case against the Templars that would justify his drastic measures. The stage was now set for one of the most dramatic and controversial events in medieval history, the coordinated arrest and persecution of the Knights Templar, driven by a potent mix of royal ambition, financial desperation, and a calculated campaign of slander. The carefully orchestrated campaign of defamation by King Philip IV reached its brutal climax on Friday, October 13, 1307. On this fateful day, royal officers across France, acting on sealed orders, simultaneously descended upon Templar preceptories and arrested thousands of members of the order. The sheer scale and coordination of this operation were unprecedented in medieval Europe, demonstrating Philip's meticulous planning and ruthless efficiency. The Templars, caught completely by surprise, offered little resistance. Once in custody, the arrested Templars were subjected to horrific torture, designed to extract confessions to the fabricated charges. Methods included strappado, rack, and burning of the feet. Under such unbearable duress, many Templars, including high-ranking officials, confessed to heresy, idolatry, spitting on the cross, and other blasphemous acts. These confessions, though obtained under torture and often contradictory, were then used as evidence to justify Philip's actions and further condemn the order. The arrests and trials presented a significant dilemma for Pope Clement V. As a religious order, the Templars were ultimately answerable to the papacy, not to secular monarchs. However, Clement V was a French pope, recently elected, and heavily influenced by Philip IV. The papacy had also recently relocated to Avignon, placing it geographically and politically under French sway. Initially, Clement V expressed outrage at Philip's unilateral actions, ordering a papal investigation and asserting the Church's jurisdiction over the Templars. However, Philip's relentless pressure, coupled with the confessions extracted under torture, gradually wore down the Pope's resistance. Clement V found himself in an impossible position. Defending the Templars risked a schism with the powerful French monarchy, while condemning them meant betraying a loyal and long-standing order of the Church. He attempted to navigate a middle ground, but ultimately, political expediency triumphed over justice. The Council of Vienne, Pope Clement V issued the papal bull Vox in Excelso, officially dissolving the Order of the Knights Templar. Crucially, the bull stated that the order was being suppressed not because the charges of heresy had been proven, but because of the scandal and damage to the Church's reputation caused by the accusations. It was a pragmatic decision, aimed at preserving the unity of the Church and appeasing Philip IV, rather than a verdict based on judicial guilt. The Templars' vast assets were ostensibly transferred to the Knights Hospitaller, but in reality, much of it was seized by Philip and other European monarchs. The final, tragic act of the Templars' dissolution played out in 1314 with the fate of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, and Geoffroy de Charny, the preceptor of Normandy. After years of imprisonment and torture, both men had initially confessed to the charges against the order. However, when brought before a public tribunal in Paris, they dramatically recanted their confessions, proclaiming the innocence of the Templars and denouncing the false accusations. This act of defiance sealed their fate. On March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay and Geoffroy de Charny were burned at the stake on an island in the Seine River in Paris. Legend has it that as the flames consumed him, Jacques de Molay uttered a curse, summoning Pope Clement V and King Philip IV to appear before God's judgment within a year. Remarkably, both men died within months of de Molay's execution, adding a chilling, supernatural dimension to the Templars' tragic end. The dissolution of the Knights Templar remains one of the most controversial and debated events in medieval history, a stark reminder of how political power and greed can crush even the most formidable institutions. The dramatic dissolution of the Knights Templar by papal decree in 1312 left a gaping void in the political, military, and financial landscape of medieval Europe. The order, once a pillar of Christendom, was now officially defunct, its members scattered, its reputation tarnished. But what became of its vast wealth, its extensive properties, and, most importantly, its surviving members? The papal bull Ad Providem, issued shortly after Vox in Excelso, stipulated that all Templar assets, lands, castles, commanderies, and movable wealth, were to be transferred to the Order of the Knights Hospitaller, their long-standing rivals and fellow military order. The intention was to ensure that these resources would continue to be used for the defense of the Holy Land, a cause that, despite the fall of Acre, was still theoretically alive. However, the reality was far more complex and often messy. Many secular rulers, particularly King Philip IV of France, had already seized Templar property and were reluctant to relinquish their gains. Philip, having orchestrated the downfall of the order, managed to retain a significant portion of the Templar wealth in France, ostensibly to cover the costs of the trials and the administration of the confiscated estates. Other monarchs followed suit, leading to protracted legal battles and disputes over the rightful ownership of Templar assets. While the order was officially dissolved across Europe, its fate varied significantly from one kingdom to another. In France, the persecution was most severe, with many Templars imprisoned, tortured, and executed. In England, Templars were arrested and their property seized, but the trials were less brutal, and many were eventually absorbed into other monastic orders or allowed to live out their lives in relative peace. However, it was in the Iberian Peninsula, specifically in Portugal and the Crown of Aragon, modern-day Spain, that the Templars experienced a unique form of survival. In Portugal, King Denis refused to persecute the Templars, arguing that they had fought bravely against the Moors and were essential to the defense of his kingdom. Instead of dissolving the order, he negotiated with the Pope to transfer the Templars and their assets into a new order, the Order of Christ, in 1319. This new order effectively continued the Templar tradition, retaining much of their structure, wealth, and military expertise. The Order of Christ would later play a crucial role in Portugal's Age of Discovery, with figures like Prince Henry the Navigator serving as its Grand Master. Similarly, in the Crown of Aragon, King James II also resisted the wholesale condemnation of the Templars. After some negotiation, the Aragonese Templars and their property were largely absorbed into the Order of Montesa, founded in 1317. Like the Order of Christ, Montesa preserved a significant portion of the Templar legacy, ensuring a degree of continuity for the warrior monks in the region. These instances of continuity in Portugal and Aragon raise intriguing questions about the true extent of the Templars' disappearance. While the order as a unified, transnational entity ceased to exist, its members, its wealth, and its traditions did not simply vanish. Many Templars, particularly those who were not implicated in the fabricated charges, likely integrated back into secular society or joined other religious orders. The idea of a complete and utter eradication of such a vast and influential organization is, in hindsight, highly improbable. Instead, the Templars, in various guises, continued to exist, laying the groundwork for the myriad legends and conspiracy theories that would emerge in the centuries to come. The abrupt and brutal suppression of the Knights Templar, coupled with the mysterious circumstances surrounding their downfall, created a fertile ground for the growth of legends, myths, and conspiracy theories that have captivated the human imagination for centuries. The absence of clear, universally accepted answers regarding their fate, and the dramatic nature of their persecution, left a vacuum that was quickly filled by speculation and romanticized narratives. Perhaps the most enduring and widespread myth associated with the Templars is their supposed guardianship of immense treasures and sacred relics. The idea that they discovered and protected the Holy Grail, the cup used by Christ at the Last Supper, or even the Ark of the Covenant, the biblical chest containing the tablets of the Ten Commandments, has become a cornerstone of Templar lore. These legends often suggest that the Templars, during their time on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, unearthed ancient secrets or artifacts that granted them immense power or knowledge. When the order was dissolved, these treasures were supposedly hidden away, spirited to safety by loyal Templars who went underground, awaiting a time when they could resurface. Sites like Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, with its intricate carvings and enigmatic symbolism, have become focal points for these treasure-hunting theories, with many believing it to be a secret repository of Templar wealth or knowledge. Surviving Templars, seeking to preserve their traditions and knowledge, formed clandestine organizations that eventually evolved into modern Masonic lodges. They point to similarities in symbolism, rituals, and the emphasis on brotherhood and secrecy. While historical evidence for a direct, unbroken lineage between the Templars and Freemasonry is largely lacking and widely disputed by mainstream historians, the narrative of a hidden continuity, a secret stream of ancient wisdom passed down through generations, holds a powerful appeal. This idea taps into a universal fascination with hidden knowledge and the allure of exclusive, powerful brotherhoods operating behind the scenes of history. Lars have also been depicted as guardians of esoteric knowledge, possessors of ancient wisdom that challenged orthodox religious dogma. This aspect of their legend often ties into the accusations of heresy leveled against them during their trials, suggesting that they were indeed involved in secret practices or beliefs that diverged from mainstream Christianity. The mysterious figure of Baphomet, an idol they were accused of worshipping, has been reinterpreted in various ways, from a pagan deity to a symbol of occult knowledge. In recent decades, the Knights Templar have experienced a massive resurgence in popular culture. From blockbuster films like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade and The Da Vinci Code to video games like Assassin's Creed and countless novels, the Templars have become a staple of historical fiction and conspiracy thrillers. These modern interpretations, while often taking significant liberties with historical accuracy, have cemented the Templars' image as enigmatic, powerful, and deeply connected to profound secrets. They reflect our ongoing fascination with the interplay between faith, power, and the unknown, ensuring that the legend of the Knights Templar continues to evolve and captivate new generations. From their humble beginnings as a small band of protectors in the perilous Holy Land to their meteoric rise as one of the most powerful and influential organizations of the medieval world, and finally, to their dramatic and tragic downfall, the story of the Knights Templar is a saga unlike any other. It is a narrative woven with threads of unwavering faith, unparalleled bravery, astute financial innovation, and ultimately, political betrayal and ruthless ambition that we have journeyed through their genesis, understanding the desperate need that brought them into existence and the spiritual conviction that fueled their early growth. We have marveled at their transformation into a formidable military machine, whose disciplined warriors and innovative tactics left an indelible mark on the battlefields of the Crusades. We have explored their groundbreaking role as pioneers of international banking, a financial empire that rivaled kingdoms and laid some of the foundational elements for modern economic systems, yet, their very strengths, their wealth, their independence, and their perceived secrecy, ultimately became the instruments of their destruction. The political machinations of King Philip IV of France, driven by greed and a desire for absolute power, combined with the shifting geopolitical landscape after the loss of the Holy Land, created a perfect storm that led to their brutal suppression. The image of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, burning at the stake, remains a haunting symbol of their tragic end, but the story of the Knights Templar did not end with their dissolution. Instead, it transformed. Their legacy endured, not just in the historical records of their military and financial achievements, but more powerfully, in the realm of myth and legend. The tales of hidden treasures, secret knowledge, and their supposed connection to clandestine societies like Freemasonry continue to captivate and inspire, blurring the lines between historical fact and imaginative fiction. The enduring fascination with the Knights Templar speaks volumes about the human condition. Their story is a powerful reflection of our eternal quest for purpose, our struggles with power and corruption, and our deep-seated attraction to mystery. They represent the ultimate warrior-monk ideal, a blend of spiritual devotion and martial prowess that continues to resonate across centuries. Whether viewed as heroic defenders of faith, victims of political intrigue, or guardians of ancient secrets, the Knights Templar remain an enigmatic and compelling force in our collective consciousness. Their tale serves as a potent reminder that even the most powerful institutions can be vulnerable to the shifting tides of history and the machinations of those who seek to control it. But above all, the Knights Templar remind us that some legends, once forged in the crucible of history, are destined to live on, forever inspiring wonder, debate, and an insatiable desire to uncover the truth behind the myth.